I
Good
can't see
evening
you,
and live.
Trey.
Good evening and live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm Dr. John Stamey, and welcome to ScaryCast. We've got an exciting guest tonight on our show. He is the creator of the Sierra Sounds, the recorder of it, and he's got a wealth of knowledge about Bigfoot. This is none other than Ron Morehead. How are you doing tonight, Ron Morehead?
I'm doing just dandy. Thank you, John. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Well, great. We're glad to have you here. And now our co-host and the dean of ScaryCast, Dr. Trey Dunaway from the Midlands of South Carolina. How are you doing, Dr. Trey?
I'm fine, John. Had a great day and happy to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you here. Ron, I'm going to get right to it. A lot of people want to know more about Ron Morehead and those fantastic Sierra sounds. I have heard them. I got to get a copy from you when you come. You are going to be the keynote speaker of the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, which is going to be March 15th and 16th coming up. And your scheduled time is between 1 o'clock and 1:15, kind of depending on when we get back from lunch. We'll all be having lunch at the Dillard House restaurant, and people can sit with you and talk to you and find out all about you. It's going to be interesting, and I think people will really like it. So, Ron, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about Ron Morehead, the guy that has become so well known for the one and only Sierra Sounds.
Well, I had no idea 50 some odd years ago when this took place, 1971 through 76, that they would have the profile they have nowadays. I didn't think they were that special, but find out they are special. It started out with me in the Sierra Nevada Mountains, California, when a group of friends of mine, they were hunters, they were up in the Sierras, and a guy came out and said that there's some kind of monster up there. They didn't know what it was. The other guys stayed up there to see if they could learn more about it. So anyway, they didn't come out when they were supposed to. And all the wives were worried because they heard the story. And told him he needed to go back and see if the guys were okay. And he said, I'm not going back up there by myself. It scared him off pretty bad. And he was shaking. He wouldn't go back. He never did go back. So it took me. That got me involved in them. I was in the first big track. I heard some of the sounds that they recorded. They had previously ran into these things in early 71. And when the other guys went up there, and later that year, they had tape recorders. In case they came back, they could tape the sounds. Well, we had no idea what they were dealing with. Nobody's looking for Bigfoot. It's a hunting camp, 8 miles in the wilderness, about 8,400 feet elevation. And it takes quite a bit to get there. It's a pretty imposing area. But that got me involved with the group. I ended up going up there as much as I could and took recorders just like everybody did. It was the winter of 71, 72 when we got a hold of Ivan Sanderson, who was a zoologist, and Warren Johnson, the leader of our group. He wrote him a letter and told him what was going on there. And he wrote a letter to a man named Peter Byrne on the West Coast, and research sent it there. And Peter, thinking it was probably a hoax too, he sent the message down to a man named Alan Berry, who had a master's degree in science down in Redding, California. Asked if he wanted to go down and interview us, but they all thought it was, I didn't know this till later on when I read the correspondence, but they all thought it was just somebody pulling their leg. It's just too incredible to be true. That's never happened before, so if it hadn't happened before, it probably can't be real, right? Anyway, Alan came down, and we ended up taking him up there in 72. And he started looking for who could be pulling somebody's leg up here in the middle of nowhere like this, and especially when it's so imposing area to get to. But he started experiencing the same thing. Couldn't find anybody hoaxing us, so he reported them like we were doing. And winter of 72, 73, 74, something right in there, he started looking for someone that could analyze them. Electrical engineer to make sure the tapes were not manipulated or if they were real or not real. He just wanted to know. And he got a hold of a Professor Curlin at the University of Wyoming who did a year-long study. He was a professor of electrical engineering. very high profile person. And he took it unbiasedly. He said, I just want to know if these things are real or not real or manipulation. So he took them that way and he started studying them. And he, like I say, did a year-long study. Presented that study at the Anthropology of the Unknown in British Columbia in 1978, I think it was. And anyway, his paper was published into a book called Man Like Monsters on Trial, published by the UCB Press in 1980, showing that the local mechanism that made these sounds was not messed with. It wasn't speeded up, slowed down. It wasn't original. No 60-cycle hum. And it represented an entity, one piece of it did 8 foot tall compared to the human. So that was pretty unique, but it wasn't enough. He presented this to the group up there, which was several hundred men. And it wasn't quite enough to get academia on board, even though he was a professor like engineers said they weren't hoaxes, they were real. That was a big hit. That was good. But it wasn't until 2008 till a cryptolinguist was trained by the Navy, two-time graduate of the Foreign Language Institute in Monterey. He worked for the Navy as a cryptolinguist trying to intercept codes and different languages to find out if the language he was hearing was a code, if there was any deception in it, and all that. That's what he did his career in the Navy. And he was teaching school, and after he retired, he started teaching school in Missouri. He came out, he heard the sounds by accident, came out to California to interview us, and found out he could take him and study it also. So we said, yeah. And he studied it for a while. He said that these things have a language by the human definition of language. And that's really unique because only humans are supposed to have that, according to Dr. Lieberman at Brown University. So you put those three things together, kind of puts it together for a picture of me. They have to have a human component to what we were dealing with in Sierra. So they were really, we tried to trick them so much. They're always a step ahead of us when we were trying to deal with them. We had no idea at the time what we were dealing with. Really, we didn't. We just thought there was some lost long ape out there in the woods, and nobody had identified yet. So anyway, it seems like it's taken a different turn now, 50 years later. We got into a lot of enigmas associated with it that we weren't understanding at the time. It was just really, really enigmatic stuff going on. I'm talking about sounds you couldn't identify. I don't mean their language. I mean sounds, metallic sounds, hovering sounds, these strange things. One time we thought our camp was being torn apart outside. It was inside this shelter, by the way, when this stuff went on. And you look out there later after the camp, all the ruckus had stopped and nothing had changed. Well, that didn't make sense to us. Excuse me. Just how does something like that happen? Nothing looked disturbed at all. That's just one thing. We had worms up there and things like that following around, and we just. Anyway, Al, being a master's degree in science, he said, whatever you do, don't talk about the weird stuff that's going on up here because no one's going to believe you and you won't be able to talk anywhere to talk about this ever. So we kept kind of close to our chest for a long time, the weird stuff. So that's how it kind of began for me. John and I've been stuck with it ever since. I've traveled the world now. I've been in South America a couple of times. I've been in I've spoken to the Darwin Museum in Moscow. I've been in Siberia. I've been in Nepal. Just trying to figure out these other things that's being reported in these other countries have anything to do with what we were experiencing in the Sierras. So that's how it kind of got started for me, and that's where it's led me into. Al Berry said, if you have to talk about anything, make sure you stay with science. So how do you answer it? It's scientific or determinist. Newtonian physics says everything's measurable and predictable, and what we've seen up there was not predictable. It just led me into quantum science. And that's where I've been the last few years. That's why I wrote my second book called Quantum Bigfoot.
Okay. That is a very interesting story, Ron. Dr. Trey, do you have a question for Ron?
Yeah, a couple of things strike me. First of all, this happened 50 years ago, right?
Yes.
And it knows that about Bigfoot now, but that wasn't really true in the 70s, early 70s, 60s, was it? I mean, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It didn't have the notoriety it has now.
So
Really,
when you heard when you heard about this and you went to investigate, was a Bigfoot in your mind that this could be, or was it just an unusual sound that you were going to investigate? When you heard it, did it? How did it tumble into becoming Bigfoot? Did you suspect it at the time,
well,
or because you
no,
were
we
tuned
thought,
into that, or how did that occur?
none of us were tuned into it. We weren't looking for Bigfoot. It's a hunting camp. The
Right.
Johnson brothers have been hunting up there since 1958. And this thing didn't start happening to them until 1971. At least that's when they first could identify it, because they heard these sounds and went out later after they stopped. They seen this huge track. And that kind of puts a strain on, because they're hunters. They knew it wasn't a bear's track, it wasn't bear's sounds that they were hearing. So kind of put it into the line of a Bigfoot-like type creature, which, again, they didn't know that, but that's something that had a big foot. And the only thing we knew about it, actually started researching it, was the Patterson film in 1967, when Bigfoot had been filmed in Bluff Creek, Northern California. But I was involved in a church, a big church back then, and so was one of my other buddies up there, Bill and Dow. It was all very, very sober camp, I should say. But I was searching for the answers to this thing. Where do giants come from? The giants really didn't think we're supposed to be around nowadays. So I started looking at biblical texts and ancient mythology and things like that. Started trying to put it all together. And anyway, did that answer your question?
Yes, and when I find it fascinating that, again, sticking with the science, because that's what I prefer. I'm a physician, so I like the science behind things, and I like to know. The fewer the surprises, the better when you can figure things out. But still, when you heard these images or these sounds, and you brought them and had them analyzed by the science at that time, to figure out this was a language being spoken by someone who's trained to identify language and codes, and to also to understand the dynamics of it and to gauge the size of the animal. That's what you said, wasn't it? Based on the timbre, based on the quality of the sound, you could estimate the size of the animal?
Yeah, Dr. Curlin at the University of Wyoming, he's a professor of electrical engineering. He's the one who studied them for you to come up with that size analysis.
Right.
Human. And he did his graphs in a book mentioned earlier. You can see how the human range, they go outside the human range. Humans can't duplicate that type of sounds. And that's, we've had other professionals listen to that and say the same thing. But he's on a graph.
And in the 50 intervening years, has it ever been re-examined by the same laboratories? Because I don't know what, I mean, in medicine, everything's changed dramatically over 50 years. I would imagine that lots of things have happened in that field of study. Has it ever been reanalyzed with other techniques that maybe did not exist in the 70s?
No. I mean, other people have listened to it and tried to do that over the years, but not to the degree that Professor Curlin did. He was
right.
He just did a full-blown study, and you got to find somebody in an institute that's willing to tackle this subject matter. It's not that easy.
I can imagine.
Because you get food out of it.
Right.
That's what happened to him. So it's always been open to anybody that wants to. It still is to this day, but after 50 some odd years, there's a lot of people try to tackle it. Not to the degree that Professor Cohen did.
Now, I read a little bit about your bio, and you certainly are a wilderness world traveler. Have you experienced any similar sounds in other locations in the world that you've visited that that bring these sounds back to mind?
No, I haven't. I did, back up just a second. I was down in the Yucatan. I've been down there a few times. And I got hooked up with a Mayan, and, Mayan culture that was there. And they speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I heard him speaking some Mayan language, and it had that Oriental twang to it, which some of these recordings that we've got have that samurai cry, they call it. And I found out that they're descendants from Mongolia, where, in other words, that's where they come from. And there's a lot of these things recorded up there in Siberia. That's the closest thing I can come to is the Mayan language, very similar to what I was hearing this year sometimes.
Huh. I recently saw I think it was a National Geographic special about translating the pictographs and how it's opened up a whole nother field of study for the Mayans. A lot of South American archaeology and anthropology has been kind of quiet for years and years, but it's opening up and it's developing a whole new exciting part of the world, especially with the advent of LiDAR and the ability to scan large areas and see what remains. It's just every time you read about it, you say, "Oh, I read about this," and then you realize, no, you didn't read about this one. This is new. That's another one that they found. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I've been in the high country down there, Cusco, all over really down there. Down in Bryan Forest a couple times. And spent quite a bit of time down there just looking over the enigmatic structures that are down there, which are obviously done by, well, the claim is done by pre-Inca people. Incas were trying to cradleboard their age to get the elongated skulls. What we did down there, I was with a couple other scientists who were checking the skulls out to see how they compared and what they were. They showed that they were not really human. The elongation, I went down to see it. A lot of times people report the incisor breast on these Bigfoot creatures, so I thought maybe there's a paper trail, a crumb trail leading up there to North America, and there is. Where the Incas used to war with the Aztecs and the Mayans in Central America, and then they have stories of warring with giants in the north. I took them to the Lovelock Caves, and I've been there 4 times trying to get permission to see some of the giant remains that supposedly that were in there. The Lovelock Caves are supposedly used to have giants living in it. It's a huge cave area. But, the Paiutes have this story that goes back where they warred with cannibalistic giants. And they were cannibalistic, I can say. So they put fire to the entrance of the cave and tried to, well, they shot them as they came out. That was in 1911 when the Batwana miners discovered these remains of these giant skeletons. But they've all been taken away now by, guess who? Smithsonian.
Right.
Museums don't even have it anymore. So, but yeah, my sounds, these sounds, I won't say my sound, but mine and Albert's, who's now passed away in 2012, but he I said anybody can challenge me anytime they want to, and I agree with that. Anybody can. There's a lot of redundancy in them too, because we're all recording.
And a lot of silos. One person can report something and somebody else will, but they'll never really get together. It seems almost by chance at times, but it would be, I admire you for what the work you've done.
Thank you. Yeah, there was 5 of us all together up there, 6 used to be with one guy in the back. And we got redundancy in recordings, that's for sure. Warren Johnson passed away also several years ago. So he's got recordings. I think his son's probably got them now. Alberry's original record. We're all recorded on cassette recorders at the time, so those I've all transferred all the ones I have anyway. Alberry's and mine into the digital one to hard drive. So I would say this cassette recorder tape will just wear out eventually. So there.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Trey. We'll come back to you for some more questions. I've got a kind of a cultural question to ask Ron. These things were recorded about 5 to 10 years after the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage, also shot in California. I mean, you got a real active place there for Bigfoot. Now, at the time that these were recorded, did you have many people that had even heard of Bigfoot, or did they just call it some kind of a creature? That's my first question.
Well, we called it a creature. We called it Biggie after a while, just because then we realized it's probably a Bigfoot, because they had huge feet. How they compared to the Patterson films, I got my theory on that, because they don't look like the Patterson print, even though they have 5 toes. They're definitely, well, you can see in here, but they're a footprint, and you find trackways. But the Patterson, I've got a whole theory on all this now that I've been doing this for so many years. I think a lot of these things are crossbred. Crossbred with the indigenous people. And some of them have been diluted down, more human-like than others. I think that's what the Roger Patterson suggests to me anyway. The tracks, I know Bob quite well. I've got one of those tracks. And it doesn't, our tracks don't have quite the arch in it. Patterson given track looks really human-like. There, you got that one. That fly. Anyway, I've delved into the science that could possibly explain the enigmas associated with these things, and I think I'm on track with, to be honest with you. It's not just about Bigfoot; it's what Bigfoot has led me into. They are part human. At least what we dealt with was part human. I'm pretty sure of that. I've got that established in my most recent book that's coming out right now. And if that's the case, then we need to know more about who we are as humans, what our potential is, because these things, whatever they are, they're very, very intuitive. They're very smart. They're not just an ape running around the woods. And Trey, I know you want to stick with science, so we'll stick with science. Let's get into, are you involved in quantum science at all?
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't have to be strictly science, but I like it when the science makes sense behind the supposition.
Well, that's where I'm at with this. Wait a minute, I lost my train. Like I say, in Newtonian physics, which we're all trained in, and we're all conditioned with certain parameters with our brain. Time we're born to believe certain things and understand certain things. Our schooling tells us certain things. But to get into quantum science, you really got to get add quantum science to your Newtonian physics. And because Newtonian physics is everything measurable, predictable. And I was involved with a group of scientists one time. I said, if everything's measurable, somebody tell me how far it is to the end of the universe. Well, I think I got kicked off the club right about that. No one can answer that. You have to conceive it. That's how a lot of quantum science is. Even though it's mathematically been established, you'll never see it. You have to conceive it. And I just press upon people to reach out into that other science that's available. And according to Dr. Christopher Breyer at West Texas A&M, this is everything from the atom to the cosmos works under the laws of quantum physics. Then you get Tesla's statement saying that what one man calls God, another one calls quantum science, quantum physics, the laws of quantum physics. So there's a lot of science that reaches into that to explain how things really work. Is there something going on in the cosmos that we don't understand? Or everything on this planet is only real if you can see it. There's one going on with us and with this planet in a three-dimensional environment that we live in. According to quantum science, there's several more dimensions, and you get into that, you realize that there's just things that you don't see. It's really there. Our visual perception, our light's perception, everything, energy, frequency, and vibration. Everything. Everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. If you find the frequency of anything, it changes matter. It's according to quantum physics, according to Einstein's statement, and according to Dr. Paul Dirac. Paul Dirac got the Nobel Prize in 1933 for antimatter, which is the direct exchange between energy and matter. Matter and energy are interchangeable. So you put that in there, and then you got a whole other facet going on with these people that say that this all would disappear. Because, a lot of academics would just throw them out with a baby water because nothing can just disappear. Well, no, things can disappear. Well, to see within 420 and 770 terahertz, that's our visual light frequency. You get out of that, and you will see it. There's all the things going on out there that we just don't see. And, almost like a bear. A bear can smell 20 times better than a human. And if you don't smell them, they'll smell you if you're downwind. From excuse me. Anyway, it goes on and on. There's a lot of science behind what I'm talking about, and how these things do the things they do. I think can be not put in the woo, not put in the paranormal, but put in the quantum science. Quantum science will answer a lot of the questions that the paranormal has. It'll answer a lot of the woo questions that people have, but it's not to be compared. Tesla, Einstein, Schrodinger, those guys. They weren't in the woo. They weren't in the paranormal. They were in the quantum science.
Well, I always look at when I say the science changes in medicine, for instance. That's when Tagamet first came out. I'm aging myself or dating myself, but Tagamet was a drug that was an H2 blocker, so it would block the production of acid in the stomach. And that was hailed as a kind of a revolutionary breakthrough with the type of pharmacologic treatment for too much acid in the stomach to get rid of ulcers. And in my own career, later on, we discovered that many ulcers are caused by a bacteria that's in the stomach, Campylobacter, and that changed our whole perspective of the, quote, science, end quote, of acid and role in ulcer production in humans. As right now, there's lots of research going on in the gut microbial milieu. And if you have a balanced gut, it might be to your benefit. And if it gets out of whack, you can have problems. Well, that almost sounds like ancient Greek medicine. But that's where the science is leading us. So a lot of times we are limited by our ability to interpret with science what we observe, or make a mistake in observing something that is not accurate because we don't know enough for it to be accurate. Does that make sense?
Very good. Yes, made sense. Science is supposed to be open-minded, I think. And
absolutely.
You have
absolutely
to be open-minded to new things and to new things going on. What I found is most academics they don't want to get out of the classical ways, and there's more going on.
Well, I have learned that in my career as a physician. I had a patient once. Well, I had a friend who was an acupuncturist. He was a he's a pain doctor, but he also did acupuncture. He took the course that's in California. It's like the acupuncture course to go to if you're going to be an acupuncturist. And I remember he told me he could treat nausea and vomiting with acupuncture. And as a Western trained general surgeon, I just rolled my eyes and I said, "Well, I'm glad." And then I got a patient who I could not control the nausea and vomiting with all the new drugs, with everything I could had. And I called him up almost as a dare, and within half an hour of acupuncture on this this poor lady. She had turned from green to pink and wanted a sandwich. The nasogastric tube that we had inserted, that came out, and she ate a sandwich. She didn't turn a hair. She went home in 2 days. So there you go. There you
Good
go.
story. I
And
love
that's
it. Yeah.
you know, and I got to see that, and it sure changed my attitude about, if you have something that's been going on for a long time, just because you don't understand it or you can't fathom it being true, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not true.
I
That's
love
all.
it. What you just said is so important and so good. And I wish everybody thought that way, because some people can't seem to get away from the box they've been conditioned in.
Well, didn't Sherlock Holmes say if you take all the possibilities and you eliminate all of them except for something else, then that has to be it? So a little Holmesian approach to the whole subject of science is probably a good thing at times.
Well, that's what I try to do in my conventions when I talk and when I get on these programs like this, is just get people to open their minds up. And I just use the analogy of a parachute. If you don't open, it's no good.
That's true.
And I'm glad you have that attitude, because it's not everybody that does. I think the medical field is expanding so rapidly. I think we're all open for something good like that. I don't know. What do you think AI is going to do?
Well, what it's going to do is open up a lot more possibilities. It's going to cross train us to think in ways we didn't think before. It's that cross pollination of science that I think is so critical. Have you ever heard of a greenfield filter?
I don't think I have.
Laser Greenfield is a vascular surgeon, and he was living in Texas. And at a cocktail party, he got an idea. He drew it on the back of a napkin. I've heard him tell this story. And he created this greenfield filter. Let me explain. If you get a clot in your calf, you get a leg clot. That clot can break loose, travel back to the heart through the venous system, get pumped through the heart, the right side of the heart, and goes into the lungs to get oxygenated. Then it's pumped, then it flows back to the heart to the left side, and then it's pumped out into general circulation. But if you get a big clot in the vein and it travels and it hits the lung, and if that clot's large enough, it will stop all blood flow through the lung, and you have a pulmonary embolism, which can be rapidly fatal. So that's one of the 3 ways you can die in a hurry: a pulmonary embolism. So here's a vascular surgeon that's very, very educated about the consequences of blood clots that do this. And he's at a cocktail party in Houston, and he's talking to an oil executive. And the oil executive explains that they've come up with something to treat oil clots that form in pipelines. And when the clot hits a pumping station, it messes up the pump. That sounded pretty familiar. He described what this was, and it's the same type of device, and he inserted. And it saved hundreds of thousands of patients' lives because they no longer die from pulmonary embolism. So I think a large part, if science has an ability to cross-pollinate from one area to another, you're going to find things that you never would have suspected, and you wouldn't have known about if you just stayed in your own little science silo of either medicine or mechanical engineering.
True. Very good story. Yeah, I like that.
You know, Trey, this is Dr. John. I've got a comment to make. When I was in academia, I had 2 papers that basically went viral. And the first one was a paper about comparing web development to architecture. It was called Christopher Alexander's 15 Properties Applied to the Design of Communication. And that thing went all over the world. I mean, you know, thousands of people read it. It was a new look It was when I took two very disparate things, put them together, and all of a sudden they meshed. And that's where I think a lot of the discoveries in science in general are coming from, is like, looking at how they handle clots in oil, and then that translates into a life-saving apparatus in medicine. Well,
That's right.
that's what we're starting to do in science, and that's why I was reasonably successful as a researcher, because I looked at putting two things together that no one had ever thought about putting together, and lo and behold, it just worked. So and the other the other one was when I looked at something called design patterns, which are patterns in programming, and I compared them to architecture, and lo and behold, they were the same thing.
Yep.
And so it's amazing what happens when you look, when you expand your research topics and look at two different things and see how they mesh together. You can find some amazing properties that can be anywhere from life saving to saving a lot of time in programming. It's kind of fun. It's a great way to accomplish research that's not just, as you said, not staying in the same old silo, not going down the same rabbit hole, but let's look at a couple of other rabbit holes and see how they apply to this first rabbit hole. So
That's exactly right, John. It's exactly
yeah,
right.
and I think so. And since we're at the halfway point, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Mind Zero, the great sauna. There's one in Myrtle Beach and soon to be one in Mount Pleasant down there in the Charleston area, where you can go to their 200-degree sauna and then take a cold plunge at 48 degrees. Now, if you don't think something will open your eyes, that will. It's good for, apparently there are some health benefits to that. So check out Mind Zero, South Kings Highway in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, basically just south of the Market Common. So give them a call, Mind Zero in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and tell Greg that we said hello. So they're our sponsor for tonight. Great people. They really are. So now Ron, I've got another question for you. You're a well-known author. You have written, at last count, 2 books plus one that's getting ready to come out next month. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. The
Would
first
you
one is
tell us about, basically you've got 3 books. Tell us about each of those 3, because I'd like for people to hear about them. And by the way, where do we go order them?
on my website, ronmorehead.com, 10, and the
That's
first
right.
book was my chronicle.
Go to ronmorehead.com. Okay. Tell us about your books. Thank you.
The first book was my chronicle. It's what got me into this and going through it, and the story about going up the mountains and what we're doing and all that stuff. And when you get to the sound that I started talking about, you can actually hear the sound. There's a download link in my in the book that you can download and hear the sound that I'm talking about. And that's my chronicle. The second book is Quantum Bigfoot, because it gets me into the quantum theory on answering some of the anomalies that are associated with these giant beings that we were into up there. And it's got quite a bit of well received. And the third book is the one I'm going to release at the conference in Dillard. It's going to be available the 15th of March, and it's called Bigfoot Unveiled. It goes a little bit deeper, in layman's terms, on how some of the stuff's actually working. I think we need to understand more about who we are and our potential as human beings to understand more about these Bigfoot creatures. They're not all the same, in my opinion. A lot of them are. Well, first of all, I get into aliens. We can talk about aliens now since our government told us there's UFOs and things like that. So I do believe that aliens have been coming here much longer than humans, and they've been here a lot longer. They've been messing with the genome of different species on this planet, and that's where I go with it. That's what some of them can be. Some of them can be from one type of alien, you mentioned, and another type. Uh, so anyway, that's my 3 books, and I think I don't think I'm going to write anymore. These last ones are hard to write. You got to have both your feet on the ground when you start writing that stuff about the quantum physics stuff. It's unpredictable. Quantum physics is unpredictable. When you go through, and I have the last 50 years, talking to people about their sightings and just traveling the world, and you hear all these strange stories, and you realize how they hook into what I witnessed as a person in the Sierra camp, and it gets deeper. It gets into I saw a UFO film. I remember just tell you that. I seen one when all this stuff was going on. I've heard sounds that there's just no accounting for it. It's not, my misinterpretation or something like that. I mean, they would have to hypnotize us all, or something strange would have to happen to us all. And we're all business guys. I mean, I was a business guy. I have a lot of employees. I was able to arrange my schedule so I could get there as often as I could. And no one was following us, way remote anywhere, and just there has to be answers to this stuff. You're not going to find the answer using Newtonian physics all the time. You just got to reach out and expand your awareness a little bit. I delve back into all the way back into cuneiform text, which is the Mesopotamian first written language, to get some of the information I've got. And it's just it's amazing what all has changed, depending on what leadership was in charge at the time, and what narrative they want. I do believe the government knows about these beings that are out there. They don't want to tell us because they can control it. They control the knowing of it. And that's just why they hide what they don't want you to know. They control the narrative. So anyway, I'll get off on that a little bit because they really do. They're not to be trusted. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all.
Well, no, Ron, you've hit on something that is a current fascination of mine. Is all of a sudden it's okay to think that UFOs could be real. I mean, that's the message I'm getting. I mean, the government is spending money, and anytime they like to spend money. They like to spend our money, but anytime they're spending money on something, there should be something behind it. I just hope it's not the $5,000 toilet or the $20 screws, but they are spending money on it. It is in mainstream media now. People can talk about UFOs. They can talk about things they don't understand, and they're not instantly labeled whack jobs. And that's a change that's occurred in the last 5 years, where it's like, oh yeah, well, yes, we agree that these pilots have seen things we can't explain. Well, where did that come from? So my question is why now?
Well, I think there's something really, really significant fixing to happen. It's my opinion, but what I've studied my whole life is this Earth is ready to change. We ought to be ready to change with it. Things are happening worldwide, and I think we all sense that and feel it. But I think aliens have messed with us. They're not supposed to interfere with our karma, what we're supposed to experience. And that's what life's all about, experiencing things and responding to it properly. But they're not supposed to interfere, but I do believe they have interfered with some of the things that's happened in the past. It was on a different timeline. And they're gonna come in as soon as somebody pushes that nuclear button someplace. I think that's when you're gonna see more and more. We're gonna be inundated with UFOs, aliens. We're already being inundated with the thought of them. You see cartoons, you see commercials, you see it everywhere. Different types of them, and that's going to happen. And I think we just need to prepare ourselves for it. I think they're going to have to acknowledge Bigfoot's out there, but then what's going to happen if they do? Right now, if they did it, well, throw a kick in everything. We'll curve in our history books, Darwinism, spirituality, all that stuff would be, well, they can't control it, they'll make fun of it, or they'll hide it. They can't control Bigfoot. And they had to turn loose with the UFO phenomenon just because too many people were reporting. So people all over the world now report these Bigfoot things. So you gotta have kind of answer for that. When they think they're just saying, well, they don't exist, or start laughing at it. You see more and more people not laughing at it nowadays. I know when this started happening with us up in the stairs. I was a businessman in San Joaquin Valley, and I couldn't talk about this stuff.
Right. Right.
You get loud. You get laughed with the funny farm or something.
Right. But now you can. And
No,
is
I
it
do.
is it the internet where you have free exchange of information, where people can self-publish if they have a computer and a lab and access to the internet? Is it just the massive information that's being shared from one sighting to another of UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever? But why is the government all of a sudden making this acceptable? And
Because they have to. Too many people see it.
I guess so. I guess so.
I know down in South America, it's commonplace to see UFOs. You can't talk to anybody. They don't laugh at it. They see them quite regularly there. And I've been there quite a bit, and they just they don't think anything of it. It's going to be that way up here. By now, you look up the sky, you don't know if it's a satellite or if it's back engineering work or if it's really a UFO. It's really an alien craft, I should say. I think a lot of the alien crafts are here on Earth. They're in a dimension that we don't see. They're outside of our frequency, our light's perception. And they're here now. I think they're ready to help us if we have to have it, because they don't want to destroy this planet. And that's what we're doing. All our technology and everything we're doing, bad.
Okay.
Give me another question.
Very, very interesting. I've got a comment I'd like to make about computer programming versus physics. Because before we had classical physics, which is, how to measure velocity and everything, we had nothing. Then we had classical physics. Then somewhere in the 50s, Feynman and everybody started talking about quantum physics. And it brought everything to a whole new level, and it changed the way we understood classical physics, Newtonian physics. Well, it's interesting about the internet. We started out with internet version 0, which was just like physics before classical physics. And then we have internet version 1, which is the search engine. That brought the internet to everybody, but it wasn't very precise. It got as precise as it could, but that's okay. I did one search for Ron Morehead, and I got something that wasn't exactly right. And I did another search, and it did a little bit better. And now we have AI, which is like version 2.0 of the internet. And, I'm working on a book right now on using ChatGPT, which is the tool that is available for everybody, $20 a month, does some pretty damn good writing. It does. So, we're seeing that, we have pre-classical physics, we have internet without the search engine. We have classical physics, and we have the search engine, which is Bing and Google and Yahoo. And now we have quantum physics, and now we have AI. So we see the same progression. And Ron, I'd love for you to comment about that. We see the same progression of quantum physics over regular physics. What do you think about that?
I think we're living in a time when if AI ever gets its own consciousness, we're all in trouble.
Yeah, I think we are.
And we can't keep up with it. And
well, AI does get to solutions pretty quickly.
Oh, well, they're all combined. It's like all of our brain in one spot. And yeah. What I think about AI, I get that. I got a whole chapter of that in my new book. Really, because I think it fits with prophecy, it fits with what I've seen, it fits with so many things.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. AI could be the wolf in sheep's clothing, but everybody's going to depend on it. It can offer you, it can change your body and make you won't die anymore. Let's put it that way.
Well,
Your body parts. It might put you out of business, so Trey. I better watch out.
No, people still fall down and get in car wrecks, and even the AI driven cars are still a source of good things. People still like to ride on horses more than they like their spleens, so it's okay.
Oh, I'm talking about in 100 years from now, or even 50 years from now, if everybody is AI.
If everybody's AI, they just need a tune-up from an electrician every once in a while.
Yeah, shot of grease or something.
Just make sure those batteries don't go out.
Well, they got it all figured out, I think. The aliens are obviously a step ahead of us as far as technology goes. So. And I think they probably run into it more than what we ever imagined.
Well, I tell you what, Ron, I'm looking forward to getting a copy of your book at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. That is March 15th and 16th in Dillard, Georgia at the Dillard House. And Ron's going to be the keynote speaker. I spoke with him, and it looks like he will hopefully be there on Friday to greet people at the Bigfoot Roundtable, which begins at 3 o'clock. We'd love to have you there, Ron.
And then the
reception is at R.M. Rose Distillery, right next door to the Dillard House. And then Saturday morning at 9 a.m., the conference starts, and it's going to be a blast. Everybody's excited. Get your tickets now while they're still available. All right, and I guess our last question is, what's up with you the rest of this year and next year? What are you doing? Because I know you keep yourself busy all the time. What are you doing the next year or so?
Sometimes a little busier than I want to be, but yeah, I got conferences scheduled about every month this year. June, though, I plan on going to Alaska again. I think I am. Some of the guys trying to take them up there for an expedition. And as you know, 2 years ago, I was up there with the Discovery Channel, the Portlock. I don't know if you've ever heard about that or not. I was on episode 4 and 5, I think it was. You ever heard of Portlock, Alaska? That's where a lot of people got mutilated in the late 40s, and they abandoned the village. And they wanted to reestablish it. Anyway, it's I won't get into that, but that's another story. But yeah, I just got stuff like that going on. I'm going to be up in New Jersey, I think, in May. I think it is. I got Pennsylvania. I got your place in Georgia the next month. It just goes on from there. I'll probably speak in California when I go out there too. Just, I don't mind. I love to be there in those places. What I don't like is traveling to them. Commercial airlines. I'm driving down to Dillard from where I live in North Carolina. But,
well, we appreciate the fact that you will be there, and we look forward to having you. And I am now going to give the last word to Dr. Trey Dunaway, the Dean of ScaryCast. Dr. Trey, what's your last question or comment for Ron Morehead?
Well, Ron, I've got to say I've enjoyed this session very much. This has been it's touched on a lot of different diverse topics, which is a great way to have any kind of a discussion about things that are unknown, because sometimes those unknowns can be revealed through ways you least thought they could be revealed. So, but I've had a great evening, and I hope you've had a nice visit with us too.
I certainly have. Thank you, Trey. I appreciate that.
Well, look, thank you for being with us. And everybody come see Ron Morehead March 15th and 16th at the Dillard House, northeast Dillard, northeast Georgia. It's about as far northeast as you can get in the state. It's about a driver and a 7-iron away from North Carolina. And so come there to see Ron Morehead. Come see Brooks Agnew. Come see Jessica Jones. I never can get her name right. Come see Jessica Jones. Come see Matt Delph. I'll be there. We'll have a lot of fun. And our sponsor this year, again, is R.M. Rose Distillery, right next to the Dillard House. So come see us all at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. Ron, thank you. Dr. Trey, thank you. And we'll say au revoir for tonight. And we'll be back soon with Brooks Agnew as our next guest. Listen carefully. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on a couple of FM stations, one in Myrtle Beach, one in Los Angeles now. I'd like to welcome the listeners of KLUB FM, and glad to have everyone here. We'll see you next time on ScaryCast.